What's up, guys? We are back on another episode of Rustomod, and we are thrashing trying to get our Willys Wagon done for Hot Rod Power Tour this year. So if you guys saw the last episode, we started wiring this entire Willys Wagon, and we got our electric air conditioning and our electric power steering sorted, so that way we can get all the electrical side on our Willys Wagon body to get ready to go to mount onto our Jeep Wrangler frame that we're actually doing a chassis swap onto. Now in the last episode, we got everything ready to go on the frame. We got our brake lines, we got our fuel lines, we have our transmission all set up with our JB Custom shifter, all the drive shaft, exhaust, everything is done, so that way we can get our chassis back underneath of our body and we can start putting everything together. So this is a big step, so all that's left to do is to finish some things up and start putting it together. So let's get to it. All right, guys, we are in the final stretch for wiring on this thing. We wired everything under the hood and we're finishing everything up on the frame. So we're getting all the little vacuum lines and everything we can get to on the frame. We actually ended up routing the fuel lines a little bit differently. Instead of teeing in the return line back there, we added a bung to the tank. So we got that done, and we got our TV cable for our transmission hooked up to the pump here. Got that hooked up. All the brake lines, everything like that are done. Trying to figure out neutral safety switch. So the next thing that we have to do on the chassis side is wire the interior. So we got our dashboard installed and we got it painted. So you saw that we welded this entire thing in. We ended up body working everything in there and then painting it the exterior color. So it turned out pretty good. So we're gonna paint the rest of the interior. But now that this is drying, we can pull that off and wire in all the dash and the AC and everything like that on the front of the Jeep, so we can keep moving on wiring. All right, so now that we've got everything on our body side ready to go, we can go ahead and start to put the frame underneath the body for the last time. All right, we're getting all of our body bolts put in, so that way we can tie it back down to the frame. Now, since this is the first time we have a motor and a transmission and all the lines and everything else in the frame, it takes a little bit of finessing to be able to get the body back into position. The body's now going to hit some things that we weren't accounting for, like our shock mounts, because we had to cut out some stuff in our wheel wells. And we also added lights and everything else to the front of the car to be able to fit everything. So we just have to massage everything and make sure everything clears and we could finally fit our body down. But once we figured out everything that needed to move, we can put the body down, bolt it down, and we can marry the two. And hopefully this is the last time that we'll put this body onto this frame. All right, so the motor is in the engine bay and the chassis is under the body for the last time. We did notice that we put this panel in here and our shock is hitting the panel a little bit, so we're gonna have to do something here. But other than that, the body should not have to come off anymore. So we have good clearance with our air conditioning stuff, and looks like we should be good on the steering. So now we just have to hook everything to the motor. We do have to cut the radiator hose inlet and outlet and straighten them up, so that way it'll line up better with the engine. But other than that, should be coming together pretty quick here. All right, so now that our motor is in, we can start attaching everything that we had onto our body to the engine and start connecting all the stuff that we had left unhooked. All right, so we're plugging in everything under the engine bay. So we got the heater hoses and everything, the cooling system done. We got our bottom charge pipes and everything done under here. We're just waiting on one coupler for the top. So we're really plugging away at this. So now we're working on throttle linkage, got all the power steering and all the steering stuff in. So plugging away at all the little stuff under the hood. There's a lot of stuff that you don't really take into account whenever you're doing a build like this, like trying to get our throttle to work and then making sure that the clearance is good. Like for instance, our steering is very close to our alternator, so we had to grind a little bit of the alternator down, but just little things like that that take a lot of time that you don't really think about. But now we'll move on to our interior and try to get our transfer case shifter hooked up.
Our tunnel height is very short over top of the transmission, so we don't have a whole lot of room. So we had to build this riser in order to get it up high enough and back further, because what happens is the cable extremely stiff and it runs into the bell housing. So we're modifying the custom shifter even more so than what it is. So we ended up knocking the corner off the back. We just put a notch in here in order to nose up the cable entry coming into the shifter. So we're going to check that out, make sure the clearance is good.
So just like everything on this build, nothing is easy, so we do have to modify our transfer case shifter a little bit, but it worked out pretty good, and that's what it looks like whenever it's installed. Plenty of clearance with the transmission tunnel. So now let's move on to the seats in the Willys, and this is a big thing for us. We want this thing to be as comfortable as we can. So this is a kind of a glimpse of what the Willys looked like before. Whenever we first purchased it, there were no back seats in it, but we do want to have back seats in it so we can take everybody on road trips and stuff like that. But we want to be able to use this thing more utilitarian, be able to throw some stuff in the back and not have to worry about messing it up or getting the thing dirty. So like I said before in a previous episode, we're actually using Volvo seats that we end up finding in the junkyard, and we're putting those things in here. Really got a really good deal on them. They're fully mechanical, so we don't have to worry about wiring them and stuff like that. So we put those in the front. We're actually using our second row seats in the front, and we're using our third row seats that we got out of the Volvo in the back. Now these third row seats were stowaway seats, so they folded flat, but they actually folded under the floor. So we're going to have to cut up the frame, make that work in the Willys, and figure out a way that we can mount them, but easily be able to remove them in case we want to throw some kind of stuff in the back of the Willys and not have to worry about seating. All right, so now that the seats are fully together, give us a walkthrough of what you had to do to get the seats like they are.
All right, well, the seats were a stow and go, whatever that, slides back underneath the floor. These were third row seats, so we're going to use them as our second row. We're using the second row seats as our first row seats because they both slide and recline. These don't recline or slide the way that they were designed. But anyway, whenever this thing folded down, the seat bottom cushion slid underneath it here. And then the seat top would fold down and allow the cargo area to be flat. So we don't have room underneath the floor in order to do that, and we're not going to add that on top of the floor. Anyway, so what we did is we want to convert them to a regular set of seats. So the seat bottom's here and the seat back is here. We redesigned the release mechanism so it you'll notice that the headrest flips. But it doesn't go all the way flat, but we knew that. At least we have the ability to fold the seat down. Now, what we did, you'll notice in here, is we've got an offset link that we designed, and then one on the other side. And that's what allows the seat bottom to go down, right, with the seat back. And then around back here, we integrated, you can operate that same latch from either the back, like happens a lot of times in an SUV. You throw one from the back and you want to flip the seat down. Well, that's the release for it. So we ended up having to trim off the edge of the seat back here. It actually came out wider because they had a console in the middle. Anyway, so we cut that back, wrapped the carpet. You never know that we actually cut it, so it looks really good. Cool. So now we're trying to figure out how to get the seat belts in. So we're going to put lap belts in it. We're going to use, those are the factory latches over there. So we're going to see where we can attach these because we have a width room. We only have 44 inches in the whole back of the.
So that's what the seats look like now. So we're getting ready to test fit them in, see how much room that we have. But let me show you how we're going to mount them to the floor. So since we have the seats like this, we want to be able to use the Willys, the entire cargo area, to be able to haul stuff. We don't want these seats to be intrusive to the back. So this seat isn't going to sit on the floor because your knees will be at a dramatic angle if you're sitting in it. So we're going to set them up on these pedestals. These are the same ones that we use in the C10. And we got these off of Speedway. Really, actually a nice universal seat mount. So we have some bars welded on the bottom. Those will bolt to these, so that will bring the seat up. So that way your knees will be at a better angle. And I'll show you guys how we're going to mount those into the back of the Willys here. Alright, so if you see in the back of the Willys here, we have these, they're called logistics cargo rails. And they're basically cargo rails that are used in aircrafts and stuff like that to tie stuff down. And so these are the seat bottoms that we're going to use to mount those seats to. So the way that these work is they have a little tab like this, and you can slide them back and forth and they detach really easily. And then to put them in, they attach like this, and then it's locked down into place. So we're going to put these rails in the back here and then mount tabs very similar to those on the bottom of the seats, so that way we can adjust where they go in the back. Also, we can detach them if we wanted to be able to use the back of the Willys, so they'll come out really easily. And we can have tie downs for any kind of other stuff that we're going to throw in the back of this thing. So this is basically how they're going to sit in the back, and then we just have to bolt the seats down to these, or we have to make some attachment tabs so they can attach to the rails. These are really common in like pickup trucks and any other kind of style stuff that you can attach tie downs for four-wheelers or whatever kind of cargo you're holding. So that's what we're going to use in the back for the back seats, and we'll show you guys how we'll put the seats in and how they'll fit. Alright, so we got our seat brackets here, and this is the fixture that we made for the bottom of the rails, and the rails are just sitting in here trying to line them up where they're going to go. But basically these will slide in place on the rails, and then we'll have this stop, so that way whenever we have it in the position that we want to, we can lock it down like that, and then that'll hold it into place. So that's how our rails are going on. We have one of these on each leg, so that's how we'll lock these into place. Alright, so now we're just going to install these rails into the floor of the Willys, just being mindful of the spacing of the seats since they are pretty wide and we have to fit in between the wheel wells. But we're just drilling some holes, bolting these things down, so that way we can figure out the spacing that we're going to need on our Willys seats. Alright, so I'm where I would normally sit in the seat in the back, and then he's sitting in the seat where he would normally sit, where it's comfortable. And I have plenty of leg room, a lot of leg room actually. And this would be the farthest position forward that we could go. So they're hitting this hump here in the bottom of the floor. So we either could cut that out and we can move them forward a little bit more. But still there's plenty of room in the back behind the seat for storage and stuff like that. So they feel really good. The position seems to be really good. So that's basically how the seats are going to look in the back of the Willys. They can fold down like you see here, or we can pull them out completely using our rails, and we can put stuff in the back of it. So it's the best of both worlds with maintaining the floor and not having to cut it up anymore. So that's what we're using for the back seats. Now let's get to installing the bumpers and making this Jeep actually look like a Willys again. Alright, so these are our powder coated chrome front bumpers, and this is the rear bumper. The rear bumper, as you saw in the previous video, we ended up chopping the rear of the Willys frame off so that way we could fit these bumpers on there. So the rear bumper will just bolt on just like we originally did. The front bumper, obviously we have the TJ Wrangler frame on the front, so we had to make some brackets for it to fit. So we bent up these brackets so that way it will bolt to where the original TJ bumper bolted to. And this is how the bumper looks. So we're getting ready to bolt this whole thing together, and see how the bumper will mount to the front of the Willys Jeep. So bumper turned out pretty good with the powder coat. Definitely not chrome, but a lot cheaper, and you probably wouldn't really be able to tell if you weren't right up on it. So
It's Rustomod chrome.
yeah, it's Rustomod chrome, not Rustomod chrome. So, and if you scratch it, just shoot it again and you're good to go. So we're gonna try to put this up on there and see how it fits. Alright, so that's how the bumper bolts. So you see our bracket here. This is just the original hardware from the Willys. From the Wrangler frame. So fits pretty good. We obviously have to put the overriser on it and then get a cover for this so you don't see all that stuff. But looks pretty good. So we put the overriders on the bumper. And we want to be able to put a receiver hitch on the front of this so we can put a winch on it. So we're going to weld it to this bar, but it'll be in the bumper but behind it so you don't see it. So we'll have to cut a hole out on the front of the bumper there to be able to get this in there. But that's basically what it's going to look like. Just mounts to the Jeep hardware. And yeah, we can still use these original tow hooks that were on the Wrangler. Alright, now that we got the front bumper on, it's really easy to just put the back bumper on because it bolts together basically the exact same way it bolted in the original Willys, because we just lopped the back of that frame off and then attached it to the Wrangler frame. Alright, got the bumper bolted down, so it just bolts right to where it used to on the old frame rails. So, and it bolts here on the sides. So, bolts just like it used to, and it fits really good. So we got both the bumpers on. So it looks pretty good. A lot more complete than it looked before. Alright, and just like that, our Willys Wagon is looking more and more like a Willys Wagon that it did before we pulled the whole thing apart. And that's pretty much the goal, is to make this thing look like it did before, but perform like a modern vehicle. So now we got that all tied up. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're coming close on this Willys Wagon build. We'll hope to see you guys on Hot Rod Power Tour this year. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe so you can see up to date on all the awesome content we have on the channel. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching.